Very well done. Thank you to all the participants. Going into round 2 on the subject of free will. Here's my remix of the fertilizer. Yeah, just going based on my notes. So I think the point is that first we have to just deal with the language. So you have these two words, free and will. Both words aren't very well defined culturally, even internationally, as literal, trustworthy language. The idea of free will, I think we've made the point that no, most of the good things about a will are going to be things that confine your will, not liberate your will. And if we convert the word will into behavior, and that's really what we're talking about, I think. I think in the end it'll just be stated that will just ends up being what wins the do competition inside of you. There's a competition in your brain with your ideals, your desire. These are the main components anyway. It's just your desire, what you want, what you have a taste for, and a contextual mechanism of understanding of themes, principles, ideals that tell you maybe what you want isn't what you want. Maybe you can't have what you want. And it's a battle between these forces that'll decide what your end result will be. And certainly you can do with proficiency, just like somebody can learn to throw a baseball very well and make it a matter of instinct. You can have reflexes in terms of your behavior, but we usually don't call things like that will. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is that the words aren't great. And what we're really in the end talking about is whether our reactions, the reactions that are our behavior in the end, are controlled deterministically by the universe, or whether there's some other force, some other manipulator. And I think there's no evidence has been provided of any external manipulator beyond your life experience, which you understand to be the truth, are necessary to a circumstance, which how you contextually view your place in the world, and whether your place is just to take or whether your place is to satisfy burdens and obligations. A side issue raised has been the typical ones related to free will, one being what is consciousness itself, the hard problem, and whether there's any necessity as a control mechanism. And I think that argument can be dismissed as no, consciousness doesn't do anything. Consciousness is a witness. You witness your brain produce the illusion of your personality. Everything I just said was composed subconsciously. I didn't have much to do with any of it. I just watch me perform. I don't make me perform. So again, we have another concept like free, like will. The idea of an I is kind of bogus in terms of being a player. The I is a watcher, a spectator, not really a player. You're just a byproduct of brain function, and brain function is basically convertible into programming. Another objection raised in another video is the idea that it might be some kind of quantum effect, some sort of smallest bits of the universe are fiddling with us, so somehow changing decisions, taking care of our indecisiveness by pushing one side or pushing the other. In the first place, those random effects wouldn't be of any real use in improving our behavior. They can just make us more chaotic. And I think the argument can be made that we're quite reliable, quite dependable. Once you say something like, I would never do a certain thing, most of the time you're pretty reliable in never doing that. I don't wake up each day and have to figure out, am I against drunk driving or not against drunk driving? No, it's always there. Our brain works very reliable. It's like a clockwork and like a computer, and there is no aberrant things fiddling with the programming. It's made to be reliable by nature, just as computers are made to be reliable by us. Reliability is what's useful. Dependability is useful. There is no use in having a quantum affected or perverted judgment machine. So anyway, choice is an illusion. We don't really have. Your brain doesn't sit there and mull things over as choices. It just weighs things and says, "This is now go. It just waits for the go message. It just waits for enough weight to fall on one side, and another leaf falls and hits that side, and it goes. I've used the analogy of you pondering whether to jump into a cold swimming pool, and there's just this, you have to just wait for your will to get there, and it gets there by just saying, give me one more good reason, give me one more good reason. And when it gets that one more good reason, it initiates the go program, and you don't consciously make it happen. It happens inside your subconscious. Alright, a very important idea brought up by Longcat is the concept of change, and the fact that we can be changed. I would argue that deterrence works. So for the people who do bring up these arguments about whether or not people are responsible for their behavior in a deterministic world, it doesn't really matter, and it certainly doesn't prove freedom. Zombie attempted to argue that the fact that we hold somebody responsible somehow ergo proves freedom of will. Now, it just proves that we understand that whether a dog is rabid, whether it's not its fault, doesn't change the fact that you have to put it in a cage, or you have to shoot it, or you have to do something, you have to dispose it. Yeah, you have to deal with the fact that it does have rabies. And when a person isn't working right, when he fails to meet the standards, you have to do something about it. And the fact is that doing something about it can be very constructive. You can prevent harms in the future because deterrence works and education works. Experience works in terms of creating change in people. Stories work, movies work, messages work, propaganda works. That's why it's out there. Commercials work. That's why they exist. It's because they work, not because they fail. We can be changed all the time, anytime, by new information, and the change is part of the determinism. It's all a swirling mess, but it's all a swirling mess that is clockwork, again, like a tornado. It looks like chaos, but it's clockwork. Alright, so to finish up, sorry about the time, but that's what this takes. This idea of making choices. So you're talking about, number one, the idea of a choice, the idea of a you doing it, and some zombie picture show used the word like accord, of your own accord. What's an accord? So you're stuck with a, what is a you? You is a spectator. You is watching your programming. There's no Mozart without Mozart being fertilized. There's no Tiger Woods without it being created. These things don't just happen. They happen because they're constructed. Alright, finishing up. So in the end, freedom fails as a concept of behavior. You don't want to be free. You want to be controlled by intelligent understanding of the mechanism, the maze you're navigating. Intelligence allows you to navigate the maze efficiently. Freedom, ignorance, allows you to make mistakes and fail. And in the end, there's these ideas of possibility and probability and inevitability. Inevitability is closed. There will be an inevitable. The fact that there are probabilities just has to do with the fact that if you run enough permutations of human being, you can have different variations of their construction. And possibility, again, is also, it's narrow, it's not wide open, but there's an opening in the sense that there will be diversity. And it's just understanding what creates the diversity and what eliminates it. And the simplest argument I could make is that I become much more predictable the smarter I become. You can anticipate every move once my logic is revealed. Once you have the roadmap, the intelligent roadmap of my values and judgments, you can predict my behavior. And that just basically proves that there is no freedom in goodwill. Alright, enough. So pick what you'd like to deal with. Again, the conceptual questions are very interesting, but I think are probably not, they're worth getting into. But yeah, I don't think we're going to find these external sources of any kind of quantum effects that could possibly lead to anything called a goodwill. And the idea of consciousness being a player rather than a spectator is probably worth going into. But again, I don't see any evidence being produced explaining structurally how consciousness is a player. So, okay, carry on. Sorry, it's twice as long probably.